Hello and welcome back to Angie B Cards and Crafts. So today I thought I would do a quick demonstration on how to make a page similar to this in an art journal. So this is the idea of it, but it's not necessarily going to be identical. I am going to be using the products that are on here, but I've changed the stamps and I might change some of the layout. But that's the general gist of it. So the art journal that I'm using is my Pink Pig 4x4 art journal. It's just a little art journal. This one is brand new. There's nothing else in it, so I thought this could be my first page. Now quite often people get anxious about starting a new art journal, and to be honest I sometimes do as well. When you open that first page and you see how lovely and clean it is, it can feel a bit intimidating. So what I tend to do is just open it on any page, doesn't matter where, and that's where I'm going to start. Okay, and that's just so that it takes away that anxiety of dirtying up your first page. So the main colour of the piece is going to be provided by these Izinks Ice things. They're by Seth Apter. They're from a company called AALL. They're a translucent gel glaze finish. They're brilliant. They're really, really different to all the things that I've got in my crafty stash. They are translucent, that means you can see through them. So if I just, in fact I'll just do it onto this page just to show you. Might as well make a start. So you can see I've been using them on here. So I've got 3 different colours that I'm going to use on the piece today. I have got this one, where's the colour on it? Rose. I have got Marron, which I think is meant to be coffee, and I've got blue mer du sud, which I think is sea blue. Am I being really blind? No, I don't think I am. Yeah, so it's blue, brown and purple basically. So they come out, they're like some of the paint pouches you can get. And they come out and they've got quite a nice sheen to them. They're very thick, so they're not going to drop off your palette knife. So if I just start putting these down onto here, you'll see if you put it on quite thickly, it's quite deep, but you can really thin it out and make it a lot paler. So it depends what it is you're after. So I'll just pop some of this down. Remember, you can always come in. One of the things that I really like about it, I don't know if you noticed that then, but you can actually make marks in it. So you can make it look a little bit different before it dries. And I'll show you what happens to those in a moment. It's quite clever stuff. As I say, I've not got anything like this in my stash. So it's quite nice to have something a little bit different. So I'm just going to pop it onto the page. I'm not being careful about where it goes or how thick it goes particularly. Just putting it on. I'm liking the fact that there are those little scrape lines in it. It just gives it a little bit more texture. So that's the purple. We'll now use a little bit of the blue. I like this colour of blue and I like the mix of the blue and the purple. Obviously not got enough there. There we go. That's it coming out a bit better. So we'll pop some of this on. The purple almost comes out pink, but then if you mix it with the blue, you do get a deeper purple. I'm getting lots of texture here because I've got lots of texture on my knife because I didn't clean it before I started. Which, it depends on how you are at looking after your things as to whether you would clean it. But I don't know if you can see, but the blue is actually going into the grooves that I used the edge of the knife to make in the purple, which I think adds a nice little bit of texture. So we'll pop some on this side. So there's some mixing, some going into, oh, you can see it really clearly there. So I'll show you again. You can see here the blue's gone into the grooves, so it just adds something a little bit different. And then if you put some on a bit thicker, you get a different look again. You can also get some nice stippling with this, which I'll just show you on this one up at the top, excuse me, brown one. So with the stippling, you can do it just using the flat of your palette knife. And I love this effect. I think it adds really nice texture to anything that you're making. So you can see that lovely stippled effect, almost like a 1970s ceiling. Okay, a little bit more blue down the bottom of here. And I'm going to stipple that if I can hold the page still. So as you can see, it's not identical to the one that I showed you, but it's a similar ilk and it's using the same materials. And that's something that you need to bear in mind with your materials as well, is just because you use them on a certain piece in a certain way, you can use the same materials in the same way and get a very different looking piece. So this is the one, I believe, that Seth Apter calls baby poo or baby's nappy, because it looks a little bit like that, but I like this one. It's a nice colour in that it goes on, it's quite brown, but because these are translucent, when you put it over the top of other colours, it just adds variety. I do rather like that one. Oh, I like what it's done down here. It's got almost an orange effect down here. So that's the colours that I'm using. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, oops, don't squeeze that out, Angela. Get a page for an old book. So you can see it's browned around the edges. It's actually out of a Reader's Digest. I acquired a stash of Reader's Digest books off my dad a few years ago. So where do I want it? I think I want that one down there. And then this piece. I think I will put up here. Yep. Right, a little bit of glue. So I'm just using PVA tacky glue. Oops. Just blobbing it on. And I'm just going to flatten it out a little bit because I don't want lumps and bumps on my paper, because I'm going to go straight on to colouring over them. There we go. The same on this one. What you might find with some of the tacky glue, and I find this quite a lot, and the older I get the more it's an issue, is that it's quite hard to get out of the tube because it is thick, it's sticky, it's very, very sticky stuff. So what you can do, and don't be afraid to do it, is actually take your lid off your glue and use a palette knife. I do that some days. Okay, so now I want to start to bring this piece of book paper into the rest of it. So I'm going to do that just by adding one of the colours. So I'm going to choose the brown and just adding it on with my finger. And again, if you don't like to get messy, you don't have to. You'll notice, oh, that's a little bit much. I'll pop it back in. You'll notice on most of my videos I end up messy, and that's just my preference. I like to get messy. Some people don't. You've got the option, if you want to do similar sort of style to this, of using a pair of gloves or applying it in a way that doesn't require you to get quite so mucky. Just using a palette knife or a brush, or even using sort of an old credit card or something. Just going to add a little bit more down here and a little bit up in this top corner. There we go. Right, unfortunately I'm going to be wasting that little bit because they don't go back in very easily, I've discovered. So make sure you don't have an air bubble behind what you're squeezing out, because it tends to shoot it out a little bit. Right, I'm now just going to give a quick blast, because what I'm wanting to do in a minute is actually stamp over the top of it. And you can't stamp over it if it's wet. The other thing that I'm going to do on this, which is something that I think's really beneficial, actually I need to add on something else first. I need to stick on some other bits that I'd forgotten about. I'd forgotten about my cogs. So I'm going to pop my cogs. I think they're going to go on this one this time. So I am going to do the taking the lid off and just use my palette knife, put a little bit of glue on the back of my hand like so, and all that does is it now means I can put my cog into that glue and get it covered and then pop it down. And the same with this one. And I'm not at all worried about the colour of these, and you'll find out why shortly. So these are ones that I've cut out for other projects, because when I cut out cogs I tend to cut out lots and lots of them at one time. I don't just cut out what I need for the one project, because it's easy enough to just stick them through the die cutting machine. Right, so I'm not worried about the colour of them. So what I need to do now, I just need to check that this is dry. It is dry. That's one thing about the ice, it dries pretty quickly. So we're now going to use a paintbrush and some clear gesso. Now I don't know if you've heard of clear gesso. Gesso is it's a primer, it's an undercoat, it basically levels the playing field. So on here at the minute we have paper, we have Izinks, which is a gel, a glaze. We also have, on this one I believe it's some Dina Wakley spray paint, so that's an acrylic. On this one we've got oxides, that's an ink. So we've got lots of different things here, and then we've got just some plain paper. So everything is going to take whatever I now put on top differently. And if you were to put white gesso on, you'd just whiten everything out. This is clear gesso, so it has exactly the same effect. It's going to be a clear layer over the top, so it's not going to alter your work in any way, but it just gives you a clear base, a level playing field to then put other mediums on top of it. And I do rather like this stuff. I think it's very clever. And another thing I tend to do is there tends to be build up blobs of things in my cogs, and I do that. Initially it was like, oh, there's a build up there, never mind. Now I do it on purpose, because I actually like the way it makes things look, because it makes them look older, it makes them look more used, so I like that. So that's all you take, it's just a very thin layer, and then pop your brush the same as you would with ordinary gesso, just in some water to make sure it doesn't dry up. If you do have a brush that dries up with gesso, you're going to struggle to bring it back to life. You can still use them, but they are rock solid. I'm going to show you one of mine. This was one that I didn't manage to clean, and it's pretty much rock solid. I still use it sometimes because I like the edge on it. It's quite a firm edge for getting stippling and getting a different texture, but it's not your average paintbrush anymore. Move that page out of the way. So these are going to take a little bit longer than just this side, because we've got some of the build up here, but that's fine. And what you need to just check is it's not going to go from behind. Now ideally, if you're really careful, you would put something behind each of these pages to protect the pages beneath. And on a good day, when I remember, I do that, but not very often if I'm honest. Okay, so now we are going to do a little bit of stamping. This is a set of stamps from AALL and Create, and I'm going to use this one, but I'm not, they're flowers, I believe these ones are designed by Tracy Evans, but I'm not using them as flowers. I'm actually going to use them as kind of a lampshade kind of thing. So the ink I'm using, as ever, is VersaFine Clair for stamping. It's really good at picking up tiny details, and these stamps have a lot of tiny detail in them. And just because I delayed that, I'll pop a bit more on. And then I'm going to pop that on there. You're in the way a little bit. Let's move you. There's one. Now I know I'm not going to stamp the whole length of it this time, but I've still stamped the whole of the stamp up, so there's no risk of me missing a bit. One thing that can be frustrating when you're stamping onto this is that it is a slippy surface because you put gesso on it, which is effectively acrylic, so it's plastic that you're stamping onto. So you just need to be careful. Again, I haven't thought this through. So if I put that on there now and try to stamp, the centre is going to catch. So what you need to do is move it over like so. So when I stamp on there now, it's not going to catch, but I now need to put a bit of extra ink on because I put my thumb on it. Sure. Pop you on there. Okay, so I'm just going to leave those three. Quite happy with that. Quick wipe of my stamp. This is about as much cleaning as I do of a stamp. Obviously I've got my trusted raggy at the side of me. Let's pop the stamp out of the way. So that's it for stamping, so we don't need that again. So I'm going to very quickly blast this because we want the ink to be dry. And again, because we're going on to acrylic, and the VersaFine Clair has quite a long open time, and I'm not actually putting embossing powder on it. If I was putting embossing powder on it, it wouldn't be a problem because the embossing powder would ensure it was dry. But this isn't, so what I'm going to do is just get a scrap of paper that I keep around, and I'm just blotting it. What I would say to you as well is that if you are working in a journal with metal rings, you have to be careful. If you use a heat gun, these capture the heat, so just be aware of that. So there's nothing else coming off there. I'm quite happy with that. So I now want to add a little bit of colour. So for adding colour, I'm going to use my water colours. These are an Arteza range. I do rather like them. I'm just using them with a water brush. So I do keep one in here so that if I'm taking this out and about with me, I can easily have access to a brush without needing a jar of water. Okay, pop my lid down, and we are going to do this pink. If you haven't used a water brush, I quite like this one. It's got a nice little word push. It tells you what you're meant to do and where. I just got these off Amazon. Excuse me. So if I'd have been painting this on directly onto the other inks, the Izinks, then it wouldn't have been taking consistently because there was lots of different colours. But because I'm painting it onto gesso, it's neutralised the different layers so that they're all the same. They're just one uniform, not neutralised, uniformed. And then to clean my brush, get my raggy, squeeze a little bit of water out, squeeze out again, and you just keep doing that. It uses very, very little water. You can see that's pretty much coming up clean now, so that's fine, ready for my next colour. And that's one of the things that I like about the water brushes as well. They're very easy to clean off. So on this one I'm just going to pop a little bit of purpley on. I've said it before and I'll say it again, no doubt. I'm not a colourist, so I'm not one who's going to spend ages colouring carefully. What I do want to do though is add some more colour to these parts. To do that, I'm going to use the watercolours. I'm just going to pop them over a little bit so that I can turn this. I'm also going to just use a spray bottle of water. Squirt a little bit of water on, and that's so that I get extra manoeuvrability of the water, and I'm then just going to put some colour on. So this is a mixture of the purple and the pink that I've just used, and it's just going to run. I'm just going to run it around the page a little bit, and then there's a couple of puddles there that I just want to get rid of. I'll do the other page, exactly the same, a little bit of a squirt. We'll pop on some of the pink. I'm going to add a little bit more purpley colour to this one. So you can see I've gone through a couple of pages there just because I've not aligned it up properly. And run that over. I do like the effect of running paint and it finding its own path. There we go. So that just adds a little bit more colour using a different type of colour. Okay, so again, quick blast with the heat gun. Our watercolours away. Now, the colours of the cogs actually work quite well, so I don't think I'm going to bother changing those colours. They work in with what I've done, which was pure fluke. It wasn't planned at all. On the other one, I did do some colouring on the cogs, but these ones are already, so I'm getting some puddle in there. So I'm just going to dry it off. Apologies, I'm just knocking over my water bottle. That seems to be my go-to method at the moment, knock things over. Right, so they're looking okay. I want some sort of inspiration for them. Now what I've got for these are part of the ephemera pack that JMC Designs' latest steampunky set comes with. And I just need to decide which ones. My World and Journey. So they look a bit chunky on there. So there's a really simple way of stopping that. And that's just using a pair of scissors. And don't be afraid to cut things down. It's absolutely fine to do this. You want things to be usable for you in the way you want to use them. So just alter them. Just because something looks the way it does when you get it, doesn't mean that's how it has to look when you use it. So again, if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know me and straight lines don't get on well. So just to negate the need to think about whether or not something is perfectly straight, I intentionally cut things wonkily. So I'm going to colour these up, and I'm going to use the Izinks again, and I think we'll go for the blue and the purple. That purple does come out quite pinky. For this, I literally just put a little bit on my finger. Again, if you want to do it on your with your palette knife, you can. This is personal preference to me. I like to get messy, and I like the effect of doing things messily as well. Give my fingers a wipe. I'm also just going to give that a little bit of a wipe just for ease of cleanup, because it comes off much easier when it's wet. And then pop a little bit of the purple on. I think this purple is my favourite colour. I do like the blue. I like the way the brown changes as well. Right, get off. It's a little bit sticky because it is a glaze, so it is going to be a little bit sticky, and you can, if you're just sticking on the lightweight things and you're desperate, you could use it as a form of glue or sticky substance. I'm just going to very quickly blast these. and get them to stay still. Right, they're not staying still very well. So I'm just going to find a pokey tool. There we go. And we'll hold it still with a pokey tool. So they don't take long to dry. That's that one dried and stuck to my pokey tool. And this one, exactly the same, quick blast. Obviously where it's thicker it takes a little bit longer to dry. There we go. Right, so remember you've just heated these up, so if there is anything which is still a little bit liquid, it's going to be hot, so just make sure that it's cooled down before you start doing other things. So if you're going to pick this up, I'm going to use Stays On ink, which again, I like Stays On ink for going around the edges of things. One of the reasons is the fact that I've got a small Stays On ink and it goes onto things like this much more easily because I've got better control of it. It's a small ink pad. But also the fact that because it's a solvent-based ink, it will go on to anything that's a bit shiny, so it's not going to stay wet. Whereas what would happen if you did this with the VersaFine Clair, it would stay a little bit wet and you'd have to use your heat tool to heat it up, but then you'd have to blot it and there'd be no guarantee that it would stay the way you wanted it to stay. Okay, so I now have my two little words of inspiration. So to stick them on, I'm going to use gel medium. Again, you can use what you want. You can use your PVA glue, you can use foam pads. I use gel medium because I want it to have some sort of depth to what's behind it. So I want it to be thicker in the middle. Gel medium's great. I tend to use my finger. You can use a palette knife, you can use a brush. If you use a brush, just make sure it's either one specifically for glue, which would be the best option, or if you're going to be using it for other things, just make sure you give it a really good wash. I'm going to give that one a little bit of a curl, just so it'll go up in the middle. And there is the other word. There we go. So nearly done now. What I like to do, just to add a little bit of interest, show a little bit of dimension, is to use a white jelly roll pen just on here to add as if there's a bit of light coming in. It just highlights it. It's a finishing touch, and finishing touches are really helpful in just, as the name suggests, finishing off the work that you're doing. And the other thing that I think every page needs is a frame. It's personal preference if you want to frame something or not. If I show you the original piece that I did, they look quite similar, I'm quite pleased with that. But the original piece that I did two different frames. So this frame has got some swirls on it because there were swirls on the stamps that I used, and this frame I've done more sketchy. I actually prefer this one, so this is the one that I'm going to use onto this one. And to make it more unified as one piece, I'm not going to frame down the middle, I'm just going to frame the outer edges. So to do the squiggly one, you start in one corner and you go back and forth, increasing roughly by a third each time. So 1, 2, 3, and don't be precious about where you're scribbling. The idea is that it is a scribbly look. So you can see it's going in every direction. It doesn't matter when I get to this bit, because these are black, I'm going to go straight over. If there were gaps in them, or if they were a different colour, I'd be breaking them up. But because it's black, it's as easy to just do that. And there we have the finished piece. What I am going to do actually, I'll add some little bits of white to my cogs. I'm purposely turning this round purely because I know that my gel medium isn't yet dry. So it's not about being realistic, it's just about where you think a little bit of highlight would go. I'm not worrying about, is this the exact source of the light? It's just to make it stand out a little bit. Okay, right, well I'm quite happy with that. As you can see, the two of them are similar but different. I have used the same colours, but I've used different words, I've used different stamps, I've changed the frame, I've done that one as one full page rather than two separate pages. So you can do little changes. If you change what you're actually using as your colourway, you get a completely different look. If you change the products, don't worry if you haven't got the Izinks. This was just an opportunity for me to show you what they can do, some of the very basics of what they can do. But you can use whatever colour you want in the background. It's just about getting a range of different colours and things going on. On this one, what I've done is put a little sunbeam just by moving my knife through, the edge of my knife through the Izinks. So there's lots and lots of things you can do with them. But I hope this has given you some inspiration and I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thank you for watching and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye!